So now we are going to discuss about Miranda, the daughter of Prospero, and what are the important aspects of her character. Now, basically, Miranda, presented by Shakespeare, she is the epitome of womanhood. All right. When you look at her, when you read about her, the only thing that comes to your mind, like she is the perfect woman. All right. So she resembles the perfect woman, and she's very beautiful. She is modest, and she's that what you call unadulterated beauty, and not only in the matter of looks but also in her mannerisms, in the way she treats people. It's completely unadulterated. Now there is a proper reason for this unadulterated adulteration. All right. So she's tender, she's emotional and intelligent. Obviously, she's the daughter of a philosophical man, Prospero. So definitely she's intelligent. So in all, she is ethereal, angelic. All right. So we can consider her to be ethereal. Okay. So why do I say she's got this why is she an unadulterated beauty? Now, when Prospero arrived with her to this island, when they were gotten rid of or sailed away, she has the least memory of how was her life like in Milan. So she doesn't even know anything about it, and that has truly made an impact in her life, and it has come to govern her life. And you can say that she is cut off from the rest of the world. She's not polluted by all those things that had happened in Milan, what had happened with her father and everything else. She hasn't got the memory of it. So therefore, she is an unadulterated beauty. She doesn't know what the vices might be, what negative things might be. So she's a very, very, very positive character, and she considers her father, the philosophical man, and nature to be her best teachers. Okay, so obviously this ignorance of her origin, it adds to the innocence of Miranda. Okay, so she is such a woman. She is so modest in her mannerisms that even the most unloved character in The Tempest, which is Caliban, who generates the disgust of the audience by his looks and mannerisms, he too talks in a very he actually pays homage to Miranda. He's like he respects her at some point of time. Yes, we have heard about the fact that he had mistreated her. I told you about this, but that was only because he hated Prospero and he loathed Prospero. That is the reason why. But other than that, Caliban also respects her, pays homage to her. So that is how modest she is. Obviously, simplicity, tenderness, these are the very big features of her character. And when she hears about Prospero's story of his trauma, of the troubles that he had faced in Milan, she blames herself that even in all of this, Prospero had to take care of her as a child and then go through all this struggle, and she blames herself and she calls herself the trouble. She doesn't feel contempt for the others who had done such an evil thing with her father. She doesn't have any contempt. She doesn't have any negative feelings for them. All right. So that is how tender and loving she is, and her emotions are fresh and natural, and her heart is just full of love for Ferdinand, who comes into her life, who falls in love with her later on, and also for the entire humanity. Unlike her father, She doesn't behave in a very tyrannical manner or mistreats others. What she has in herself is love, love, and only love. That is what we can conclude about Miranda, that she sees all things through, might be rose colored lenses, you can say that, or maybe in the light of affection. That is what I mean by rose colored lenses, that she sees everything in the light of affection. Okay, so the next character that I'll be discussing about is Ariel. So Ariel, as the name suggests, he is the spirit of air. Okay. It is written in his name, Ariel, so he's the spirit of air. And but you know, it is very ironical about his character that he doesn't feel at home in the air, you know, just gliding along and everything. He is very home at sea. He likes to be a sea spirit. Okay, so more than a spirit of air, he loves the sea. That is what we can understand about him. And in the entire story, or the play to be general, Ariel has been made into a very lovable and likable character. Okay, very pleasing personality and loving. So he contributes, he and his other train of spirits. He's the chief spirit of, he's like the chairman of his community, his spirit community, however, but then also he's under Prospero. So he contributes to the supernatural part, most of the supernatural part in the play. Obviously there are other supernatural elements also other than that has been contributed by the others and not Ariel, but then also he takes a lot of space in that category. And in spite of being innately supernatural and a magical spirit, or a pixie or elf that you can call, okay, he has human qualities, okay. That can be his childlike simplicity. He is always in that, you know, very energetic and very everything about him is very childlike, all right. So all those things that we associated with being in childhood, those can be talked about in Ariel. Another thing that really is there throughout the end of the story regarding Ariel, that his reluctance to, he's always hesitant to follow Prospero's orders. Alright, so somewhere he does his bidding obviously, but then in the initial part he is a bit of reluctant, and that is there throughout the story. So reluctance is another thing about his character. So whenever Prospero tells him or instructs him to do something, to be something, he always shows that sort of hesitance, or he doesn't want to do it. So it is evident in his dialogues and however he tries to portray himself. And one thing that he always look forward to is an eternal liberty. So he always wants, he never wants to be imprisoned. First, that was his fate. He was imprisoned by Sycorax. He couldn't be free. He just wanted to be free. He just wants to be free. Liberty is his ultimate desire. And then after being released from Sycorax's spell, he is devoted. He is compelled to work under Prospero. So that is his misery, that is his fate. And his ultimate desire is to be free, to be liberal. Alright. Now, other than that, we can also celebrate his human qualities other than being childlike or something like that. He is definitely loyal to Prospero. He might show reluctance in following his orders, or he might utter something that shows reluctance, but then leaving everything aside, he's very loyal to his master Prospero. And I find when I have to talk about his this might sound very cliched, or might sound very superficial, but however, whenever I talk about his liberty to be his ultimate desire, I I feel that he has a resemblance to a character from Harry Potter, Dobby. So at times, it might be that I relate Ariel to him. He's very loyal to his master, then he always wants to be free. It's only this trait in him that I really relate to Dobby, a very loving character. Obviously, he's also loving and pleasing like Ariel, also is mischievous. We can also take note of that. So other than that, yes, so that point is another aspect that I'm going to write about, this playful nature or mischievousness. Other than that, being playful and being mischievous, playing pranks, he's got his heart is in the right place. So he represents virtue, and also he expresses pity and sympathy in many situations. Okay, so this is who Ariel was. He loved music. He was always joyful, and whenever his heart was not very, he never had any heavy or serious feelings. All right, so that is what we can conclude about Ariel to be as the spirit of the air. In the next bit and the last portion, I'm going to speak about Caliban, which I think is one of the one of the most important characters created by Shakespeare. Alright, so moving on to that. Okay, so last but not the least, we are going to discuss about Caliban, who is the first impression of Caliban that we have is that he's very ugly to look at, and he generates disgust from the audience. That is how Shakespeare had created him. But and he is a complete foil to Ariel. Whoever Ariel was, that lively, that childlike spirit, Caliban is just the opposite. If Ariel is of the air, very free and very light-hearted, singing all the time, Caliban is of the earth. You might know what I mean when I say that he's very earthy. He's like from the earth, so he's very rough and very brutal in his ways. So that is how he is, and this can be the reason that he's the son of a witch, son of the witch who cast the spell on the island Sycorax. And of course he looks ugly because he is deformed, and he's a slave. He has been enslaved by Prospero. Just because the fact that he looks ugly and everything else, that becomes very easy to discriminate him against the others who look pretty normal. So he is somebody in the story who I think, and many other critics also do, so he's very marginalized. Okay, so he has been given the identity of a monster. And obviously he's an unlovable character. People can't love him, and for a greater amount of time we actually associate a lot of harshness, a lot of unpleasant attitude with Caliban. We associate that. So because also in a way he tries to dishonor Miranda, and that generates the wrath of Prospero. He becomes angry at him, but as we go on and learn more about this character, we tend to sympathize with him. Caliban is very sensitive, and this is not the only thing that there is about his character, that he's ugly to look at, he's enslaved, and he doesn't have any sort of personality. It's not only that, there is something else. There is a deeper meaning, there is a deeper truth that Shakespeare wanted to reveal through this character, and by this he directed our focus on the aspect of preconceived that we already know about, the theme of colonialism. I talked about Prospero representing the white supremacy. So here Caliban, being the enslaved monster, ugly to look at, maybe he had colored skin, he was not as white as Prospero, that colored skin. Maybe that was the reason he had been called ugly and to look monster-like. Because with all the issues being prioritized right now regarding racism and everything, we definitely understand what went about here, why Caliban was so marginalized, and he is the symbol of the colonized man who is suppressed by the superior man, who represents to be Prospero, who has all the knowledge and everything. But Caliban is of the earth. He doesn't have knowledge. He's not a philosophical person. He is not so wise like Prospero. He hasn't had that opportunity. So he is a victim of human greed. Why I tell you, the island that he lives in, that was his mother's. In a portion, he raises his voice. He just vents it out when he says that the island belonged to his mother, and Prospero was the one who came there, which is pretty similar to the fact when the whites had gone to different lands to colonize people, whether it was in Africa, whether it was in our country, India. So it's the same with Caliban out here. His island has been snatched away from him by the superior man. And in one instance, we also find Prospero bribing him in order to get to know about his wealth, to discover his wealth. Alright, so this is where he feels betrayed and he tries to conspire against Prospero. But then at a point of time, he realized his mistake. He realizes it. Prospero wanted to civilize him. Alright, because he thought he was very uncouth, very brutal. But there were other people who conspired against Prospero. What about those people? So weren't they as uncivilized as Caliban, even though they had received that education and everything else? We talk about Stefano, we talk about Alonso or Antonio. Weren't they as uncivilized as Caliban when they tried to conspire against him? Even having that amount of education, receiving that amount of polish that we usually call of the we associate with civilized, being civilized. So they did. But then if we measure him to all these people, then we can sympathize with Caliban definitely. And then at the end, he realizes his mistake and he also feels contempt for the other people out there, especially Stefano. Okay, so we can't really blame Caliban for nurturing that kind of hatred for Prospero or the others. It only might be a consequence of the fact that he was colonized, or that his colonized master had imposed on him. So definitely we can sympathize or at times empathize with Caliban as a character, and Shakespeare has portrayed him beautifully. So this is how we can sum up about the art of characterization in The Tempest. Thank you.